everybody. Welcome to the weekly news recap for the 13th to the 19th of January 2025. So, this week, Nintendo unveiled the Nintendo Switch. It's a very short video. It's 2 minutes-ish, a little bit more than 2 minutes. Not showing off a whole lot, just showing off the console itself. As most of the leaks have already shown us, it's a bigger Switch. It's about the size of a Steam Deck now instead. Otherwise, there's not a whole lot else to talk about, as they didn't really go into any specific details or, specs of the machine, what chips it's using, what kind of processing power it has, anything like that. Some interesting changes, though. They do have the hinge, rather, is hinge stand. It's not the little tiny one leg that the original Switch has. Since they're using the Switch OLED stand, so it doesn't snap off immediately. An interesting thing here, the controller, or the Joy-Con, hang on, I'll let it finish doing what it's doing. I think that's the end of it there. There's an extra button here. Don't know what that is. So that'll be interesting to try to figure out, what the fuck this thing is supposed to be. On top of that, we have the shoulder buttons as usual. This dock here is how it docks to the tablet part. Not sure what this button is. Might be for pairing. And then this here, you can't really see it from this angle, but this is an optical sensor. And if you look at the bottom of your mouse, there's a good chance there's one down there too. So it has been speculated that the Joy-Cons will have some kind of optical mouse functionality. So potentially that's what that is. But yeah, we don't know necessarily what the optical sensor is for, and we don't know what this button does, because I haven't mentioned anything about it. To refresh your memory, in case you don't have your Switch near you, the left Joy-Con already has a capture button, so it's not that. There have been some leaks and some mock-ups of the Joy-Cons where we've seen that it actually has a C here, the letter C, as in church, as in Joy-Con. I don't know. Cast, maybe. Capture. It's just a Pokemon thing. I don't know. It could be a change button, change mode. Maybe you change it between it being a Joy-Con and it being a mouse. Who knows? Anyway, moving on. That's the left-hand side. Not much different. It's missing, obviously, the extra button. That's the capture button. Okay, there's a much better look at the optical sensor there. I'd say this is just for pairing, but I don't know. And it does look like there's an extra... Is there an extra button here? Or here? Or are they just for grip? I don't know. Anyway. It's also not clear if the Joy-Cons are going to have the Hall effect thing. It makes the... kind of get rid of the drifting. I guess we'll see. Yeah, how they dock is probably the more concerning thing, because this is a pretty obvious point of failure for the whole thing. And I have seen people using the Switch Joy-Cons and putting the Joy-Cons on wrong, putting them on the wrong side and stuff like that. And maybe that's why they're going this route. But this seems like an obvious thing that can just snap really easily. So that could be an issue. We'll see. But I think that's probably a fairly significant problem right there. Anyway. So they snap in now rather than slide in. They're likely magnetic, but we don't know for definite yet. Anyway, that's it. That's all we know about it. There is more to come. There'll be a Nintendo Switch 2 Direct in April. And then this is our first look at Mario Kart 9, or whatever they're going to call this. Let's skip back to the start, because it does show something Can't remember if it's exactly at the start or not. That's a lot of slots. You know, it's 11, 22. No, I can't count. 24. I thought this was 5 for some reason. It's not. Anyway, it's 24 slots. That's a lot for Mario Kart. I don't think it's ever had that many potential players. We don't know if it's going to host 24 or not. But it could. Something else people have pointed out is a lot of the carts themselves have a fairly prominent gas tank on it. And there is a shot later on. Here's a shot of the dock. It's got a rounded profile, but otherwise I don't think it's hugely different. We can't see any ports or anything on the dock, so we don't know. Yeah, so pointed out here is a Yoshi's gas station, maybe. Yoshi's gas station and possibly a burger joint. There is a pickup here. So there's a suggestion that because of the fuel tank prominence, that the roads are way bigger and so on, that maybe there is a fuel mechanic for whatever this Mario Kart ends up being called. But again, they haven't said anything about it or even announced that it's a new Mario Kart even. And then here's the last kind of bit of contention. Nintendo Switch 2 is backwards compatible with the Nintendo Switch asterisk. Some games won't work. They, as far as I'm aware, have not come out with a list to say what games exactly will or won't work. There are some fairly obvious ones. The Nintendo Labo is built almost entirely with the Nintendo Switch in mind. It conforms to its exact specifications, sizes, and all that. So that kind of makes sense. Now, Nintendo Labo wouldn't work. There's potentially things that rely entirely on the Joy-Con. Maybe, may not work. 1-2 Switch, potentially. It's possible maybe the Joy-Cons work a little bit differently now. Enough that the game doesn't work. This could also just be a case of Nintendo saying, no, our games aren't backwards compatible, you have to buy them again, which is very much a Nintendo thing to do. Anyway, this could also just be a legal covering their ass just in case, because they haven't been able to do an exhaustive test of every single Nintendo Switch game. Because there's a lot of them, and a lot of them are weird hentai things. Anyway, that's it though. That's all we know about it. As I said, there will be a Nintendo Switch 2 Direct some stage in April, 2nd of April. So, and they are going to be doing hands-on events held around the world. Can almost guarantee there won't be one in Ireland. I don't really even have to check. I will check, but I really don't have to. Anyway, Nintendo official website if you're interested in getting a hands-on on it. But the game or the console will be out this year. So, I mean, unless you really are dying to do it. Anyway, that's all we know about the Nintendo Switch 2, which isn't really any more than what we knew from all the leaks. Right now, it seems like the vast majority of the leaks were correct, or at least the ones that were worth paying attention to. Yeah, there's nothing there that's really, that we weren't necessarily aware of. The extra button that's on the right Joy-Con, I guess, is maybe a bit, we don't know what that does. It's possible it doesn't do anything. Oh. Maybe it's also a pairing thing, who knows. Anyway, moving on. Those weren't the only updates this week. We also had a teaser trailer from Rebel Wolves. Rebel Wolves are made up of former CD Projekt Red people, specifically people who worked on Witcher 3. So this is almost entirely CG. It is a very Witcher-y trailer. Blood of Dawnwalker, as the name would possibly suggest to you, it's a vampire thing. A lot of the Witcher trailers are kind of like this. They're just showing you in-world what potentially might end up being a quest kind of thing. It is its standalone thing. It's a completely different company. It's not associated with CD Projekt Red or anything. It's not a Witcher thing. It's their own thing. They're just using the fact that they worked on a game that people really like. So why not use that a little bit in your PR and your marketing? Anyway, it's a fairly lengthy trailer. I'm going to skip to the absolutely tiny amount of gameplay that's at the end of it. So the tiny amount of gameplay suggests that we are playing a Dhampir, like a half-blood. So someone who has like vampire powers, maybe not all of the vampire powers, but on top of that, they only have like partial of their weaknesses as well. So they can operate out in the daytime, hence Dawnwalker name. Some other things that we've read from their PR is that depending on the time of day, you have access to different powers. So during the day, you're mostly relegated probably to your mundane human stuff. But at night, I guess you gain access to your vampiric abilities and what have you. There's also a bit of a time limit thing on the game. You have 30 days, 30 nights, 30 days of night to rescue somebody or something like that. From what they've said, there isn't going to be a strict, like, ongoing clock kind of thing. Like, you will be kind of, can take your time with it, you know, you don't have to worry about the clock necessarily. It's probably more a case of quests that you take probably advance the overall clock or something like that. But that does also suggest that there's probably no time of day mechanic, which is kind of odd when they have a daytime nighttime mechanic going on already with your special abilities. So I don't know. They may just be trying to placate people before they go, oh no, time limits in my video game, I hate it. I'm one of those people. Anyway, moving on. Death Howl was announced for, I think it's just for Steam right now. So Death Howl is a kind of, it's a roguelike deck builder thing, which is all the rage still. It's billing itself as a Souls-like deck builder. And I don't know if that just means it's really hard, or if it actually has the corpse running mechanic of, do you drop your deck when you die and you have to go run and pick it back up again? Is that what the Souls mechanic is? We don't know. It is set in a kind of prehistory, like caveman time, caveman age kind of thing. But yeah, we don't know too much about it. It looks nice. I mean, it looks, you know, grotesque and whatever, but, you know, in that sense, it looks good. Anyway, that's Death Howl. We don't have any news about it. It's just wishlist, I think. You play the demo soon, though, tomorrow, even. Or today, if you're watching this on YouTube. Or yesterday, if you watched this the day after I put it up. Or 2 days ago. You know, anyway, moving on. War Torn. I believe this is from former Bioshock people. And I think some former Dragon Age people, I'm not sure. The lead designer of Bioshock, and Borderlands, not Dragon Age, Borderlands, okay. Very different games. Anyway, so this is kind of like a fantasy RTS, I suppose, but it's got more of like a skirmishing feel to it. Like the units aren't like massive, the maps aren't really expansive. It does seem like it's more of like a small scale strategy game. I don't know if that makes sense. Maybe it doesn't. Maybe there's a better name for this kind of genre. But it doesn't feel like the kind of sprawling things you'd expect from something like StarCraft or Command and Conquer and that kind of thing. Or maybe not. Maybe I'm misremembering those games. Anyway, yeah, I don't know. I don't know why you do a flip while you're firing a bow. Wouldn't that just drop all of your arrows on the floor? Anyway, this is another one that we don't know a whole lot about. It's another wish list now type thing. Anyway, moving on. Little Gator game we played on the channel a couple of years ago. It was a kind of cozy sort of take on Legend of Zelda a little bit of Breath of the Wild and that kind of thing. But it was very much a kind of like kids' imagination running wild kind of thing. It was meant to be a cozy kind of fun thing, and it is. It's a fun game. Anyway, their Into the Dark DLC has been announced, which is a little Tears of the Kingdom, I guess, and that they're going underground, but it is another like kind of zone for Little Gator game, new characters, new interactions, that kind of thing, and more cozy stuff. Anyway, I don't think they had a date for it yet. Yeah, it's just wishlist. Okay, so they don't have a date yet. Moving on. Moroi has gotten a publishing agreement and is going to be slated for some stage of in early 2025. I'm reasonably sure now is early 2025, and it's not out, so I don't know. Maybe they're lying. Who knows? I don't know. There's still plenty of time to go. So it's like a top-down dungeon crawler. There's a bit of twin stick shooting to it, and then there's obviously melee combat as you're seeing here. It's got a kind of grungy, dirty, almost Diablo 2 kind of level to it, but then it's also got a weird sort of, I don't know, claymation vibe going on. I don't know if that's exactly accurate, but that's kind of the feeling I'm getting from it. And the biblically accurate angels. Anyway, Moroi, it's PC only for now. It'll be some stage in 2025. Early 2025. Speaking of also at some stage in 2025, although this one will be much later in the year, Whisper Mountain Outbreak is it's like a multiplayer, it's like a co-op multiplayer survival horror kind of thing. From this isometric viewpoint, you can see fairly detailed like pixel art kind of thing, but it is meant to be a kind of combination Resi, Resident Evil, and like a bit of a horde shooter type thing going on. Lots of puzzles, lots of things that can kill you really easily. I'm not sure if it necessarily has a story. I think it kind of plays a little bit more like Phasmophobia, Lethal Company, that kind of thing, and like you just go out into you just have scenarios, I think, that you're dropped into, as opposed to like an overarching storyline. It's not entirely clear. But anyway, that is scheduled for Q3 2025. And then last one with an actual real release date. Rusty Rabbit is, I say real release date at some stage in April, I don't remember when. It's a teen, I think. Anyway, so Rusty Rabbit is a side-scrolling platformer mech thing. If you have ever seen Fist, which is also a side-scrolling mech type thing with a rabbit protagonist. Although in Fist, it's like the mech is just a big, your arm is like hench. Otherwise, the rest of it is just a rabbit. Whereas this one, they went the whole way and it's the whole body instead. Anyway, customize your mech and all that jazz. Yeah, I don't know, it looks fun. Again, its exact release date is 17th. Okay. 17th of April, 2025. Everything except Xbox. Okay, that's it for the trailers. But some in kind of like news that was not on my bingo card kind of thing. The creator of retro FPS Fortune's Run is going to prison for 3 years. So Fortune's Run is a immersive sim. It's really impressive immersive sim. Has a really good combat system, melee combat system. Played the demo as part of one of the Steam Next Fests, and it has been in early access for a while. It has been a solo endeavor for the last while, as the other developer kind of left the project a while ago. So now it is a zero developer endeavor. Anyway, so the current sole creator of immersive sim shooter Fortune's Run has abruptly announced that the project will be going on hiatus because they are going to jail. And it says jail, they're going to prison. There's a difference. Anyway, 3-year sentence for violent crime. The other developer is no longer on the project. They've left game development entirely after surgical procedure did not go well for them. So they've just left game development entirely because of that. Allegedly, their departure has nothing to do with the prison sentence. Take them on their word on that one, I guess. It's a long story. I've lived a very different life before I was a game developer, and I wasn't living very well. My case is 5 years old now. I've been going through the legal process this whole time. I've been working on the game. I've finally been found guilty and sentenced. I'm going away next month. It's a shame. It's the consequence of my actions. I was a very violent person, and I hurt a lot of people in my life. Fortunately, the sentence isn't going to help with that at all, but I guess we all know that. Anyway, it was only to mention that it was not sexual assault. But otherwise, they didn't go into what exactly was the issue, or what exactly was the crime committed. Anyway, what has this got to do with the video game? They're the only developer, so development will cease, essentially. Since the other developer and I have decided to part ways, development will be completely interrupted until I am released. I know many of you will be upset and disappointed. I mean, please understand, there's nothing I could do about it, not really. These wheels were in motion long before I started making the game, and it's just been slowly unraveling in my face the whole time. So, gonna be a 3-year pause, I guess, on the early access, assuming they want to keep doing game development when they get out. Or, you know, parole. Maybe they'll get out a bit earlier kind of thing. But for now, at least, the last update is the last update for a significant amount of time. And you may never see the game come out. Don't know what the crime was, but, you know, they were convicted of it, so... They did, at least the court seems to think they did it. Anyway, don't know. Can't comment on it, because we know very little about it. And I haven't really been following... the game's development. As I've mentioned before with early access games, I just wait. I'll just wait for them to come out. I don't really pay attention to the development process. Same with Kickstarter stuff. I'll back it and then I don't want to hear about it again until it's out, pretty much. Anyway, that was a weird one. Moving on. 72 indie horror games on this showcase. So Eek 3 is essentially a horror alternative thing for E3. It was meant to be Halloween of last year, but technical difficulties, they didn't get around to doing it. So instead, they put it out earlier this week. It's about 2 hours of, like, haunted PS1 games, essentially. They're like throwbacks to, like, the PS1 era, we'll say, with lots of pretty much entirely all horror games. It's over 70 games shown off. It's about 74 in its entirety. Quite a long show. I personally have not gotten through the whole thing yet. I'm still working my way through it. Back-to-back trailers gets a little exhausting after a while. But yes, they're talking about a couple of games that were shown off there. There are some really interesting ones that I've seen just in the first half. But a nice one is there is a downloadable demo disc. If you are from that era of video games, who grew up on the PS1, PS2 even, the internet wasn't a thing yet. So if you wanted to get your video game news, you had to buy it from, you had to get it from magazines, essentially. And they come every month, and they'd entice you by having a demo disc. And the demo disc would have, you know, upcoming demos for games on it. So this is kind of a throwback to that. And it doesn't quite have every game that's shown off on it, because, well, some of the games that are shown off are already out. And then some of them are so far in the future that they don't have something to play yet. But there is a demo disc for it. So the link is there if you want to check it out yourselves. Here's another kind of useful thing that somebody has put together. This is essentially a list of games that are streamable on the PlayStation Portal. It is quite lengthy. It's a lot. It's not quite every game, but it's a lot of them. And you can filter it based on, you know, your country and that kind of thing. Again, link is in the description, but it's just psportal.games. And then finally... What? Okay, fine, go away. Weird. Anyway, Escape Academy is the free game on Epic this week. So you have until Thursday to claim it. Escape Academy is a first-person escape room puzzle kind of thing. I think it has a bunch of DLC as well. I'm not sure if the DLC comes with this version. Anyway, that's your free game for this week. So middle of the month, PlayStation Plus Extra and PlayStation Plus Premium have some more games added to them and are losing some games at the same time. Standout this week is God of War, or this month rather, is God of War Ragnarok. It's the sequel to the reboot of God of War in 2018, so continuing the Norse adventures of dad and boy. This one I haven't played, so this might be the first time PlayStation Plus Extras, you know, main game is actually something I haven't already played. Next up after that is Like a Dragon Gaiden, The Man Who Raised His Name. This is a sort of in-between Yakuza game. So it's in between like Yakuza 6 and 8, I think. So it's returning Kiryu, who was the main protagonist from Yakuza's 1 to 6. And then it was taken over by Ichiban for 7 and 8. So it's essentially what he's been doing in the meantime. So it does play like the old Yakuza games. It's real-time combat. It's not the turn-based approach that they've changed to. But from what I've seen of it, it seems like it's a lot of fun. This is a very kind of silly, almost kind of game. I mean, the Yakuza games are kind of silly in general, but anyway. Atlas Fallen, Reign of Sand. Atlas Fallen is kind of like Forspoken, I guess, only worse. Which is quite the achievement, because Forspoken is already pretty bad. Anyway, Atlas Fallen does have an interesting combat mechanic in that the more you are fighting and the more you are chaining combos together, your attacks increase in ferocity and speed and damage, but your defense decreases the same amount. So it is incentivizing you to continue combos, but also avoid getting hit, basically. Or go the opposite direction, and you can have a really high defense, but, you know, don't go in for an offense that much, or stick and move kind of thing. Anyway, I thought it was an interesting mechanic. It doesn't quite work, because you can just get one-shotted. You know, if you think you're going really well, and you just slip up on one dodge, and you're almost dead, pretty much. Anyway, it's free now, though, ish. You do have to pay for a subscription. Atlas Fallen, Reign of Sand. The Reign of Sand bit is this extra DLC they put out, which had like some new creatures. Changed the regression system. There's some new enemies and new enemies and so on and so forth. Reworked voice acting is a good one because, good God, was the voice acting bad in the original? I have not played the Reign of Sand DLC, so I can't say how different it is. SD Gundam Battle Alliance is, I think it's just like a brawling type thing. Doesn't necessarily say what kind of game it is. Anyway, it's a kind of like crossover thing from a lot of different Gundams. I don't really follow the series, so I can't really speak to any more about that, but the idea is that it's a crossover episode, more or less. Sayonara Wild Hearts. So we played Lorelei and the Laser Eyes on the channel, and I thought that was a very, very good game. This is same developer. This is a game they made previous to Lorelei and the Laser Eyes. It's very different. This is kind of an on-rails rhythm action in some ways. It's also very good, though. Very good soundtrack as well. Anno Mutationum, again, is the collector's edition, so it comes with a bunch of extra stuff, but we played this on the channel a while ago. It's a side-scrolling kind of cyberpunk. It's not exactly a Metroidvania. Side-scrolling visual novel /em-up type thing. I liked it. Thought it was good. It's not amazing, but I enjoyed it. Orcs Must Die 3 is a tower defense, horde attack kind of thing. Citizen Sleeper is an incredibly good attempt to build a tabletop role-playing game into a video game. It's very well done. Excellent story, even if you're building a lot of the story yourself. It's really good, like, time management, resource management thing, while also doing a kind of bit of role-playing along the way. Very good game. Poker Club is what it sounds like. It's a poker game. PlayStation Plus Premium is getting like a PS2 port and a PS1 port. So Indiana Jones and Staff of Kings is a PS2 port of the game for 2009. I don't remember it. I don't think I ever played it. And then Medieval 2, which is a port from the original PlayStation back in 2000. Medieval 1 is jank as fuck, but fun. Medieval 2 is just jank. it's not really fun. Anyway, it's there now, I suppose. Anyway, those are some of the games you can play soon. What if you wanted to play something right now? Well, you can play Dynasty Warriors Origins, which has been getting decent reviews, which I'm kind of still a little bit shocked about, because I remember times when Dynasty Warriors would get slated in reviews for being like repetitive and cheap and that kind of stuff. And the gameplay isn't really any different to your standard Dynasty Warriors. Like, I feel like I'm taking crazy pills. But anyway, trailers I've seen and gameplays and live streams and what have you doesn't have me thinking this is any different to your typical Dynasty Warriors game. They've gone a little bit more in on cutscenes, I guess, and there's like some what's the word? Set piece moments and what have you, but it's still just Dynasty Warriors. And not only that, you're playing as this unnamed amnesiac protagonist thing, so you're not even playing as any of the characters from the Dynasty Warriors. I say characters, they're like historic people, but anyway, a huge draw of Dynasty Warriors was how many different playable characters you had, and how so many of them had different fighting styles. Whereas this one it's the same guy. He has about, I think, 6 different weapon types that all have their own different style, but otherwise, it's a far cry from like the 30 plus that you had in previous Dynasty Warriors. There's an open world map. I say that it's really more like a traditional JRPG world map where you just move from location to location. It's not like an open kind of Grand Theft Auto thing or anything like that. Yeah, I don't know. Anyway, like, the Dynasty Warrior games are fine. I like them. I just don't see why it's getting such good press when it's not any different to kind of the older Dynasty Warriors. Is it entirely just because it's in the Unreal Engine and they're using that to make it look better? Anyway, Dynasty Warriors Origins. Blade Chimera, this is from Team Ladybug. Team Ladybug have mostly been making a lot of fan games. And things like Toho and Record of Lodoss War. So this is their first original IP. I don't remember if I streamed this or not, but it was part of a previous Steam Next Fest. And I checked it out then. I thought it was really good. So it's a kind of Metroidvania. It's got melee combat and ranged combat. And you have this sort of... It's not Twilight Princess. What's the... I keep forgetting which Zelda it is. What's the Zelda that you have a talking sword? Is it Skyward Sword? That probably would make sense because it's sword. Anyway, it's kind of got that going for it, and the sword itself has a personality, but it also has its own abilities and things like that. So it can... It's got like a time rewinding effect. It can create a shield for you. It can attack enemies, obviously. It's got a grappling thing and all sorts of different things. Anyway, it seems like it's really interesting. So it could even turn into a jetpack. Good stuff. Blade Chimera, that is currently PC only as far as I'm aware. Arcane Age is I think it's a PSVR 2 exclusive, but I would have to check up on that. It's possible it's on Steam VR as well. I think it is a kind of alien biome survival-y type thing. Be honest, I haven't looked too much into it, but a lot of people who are into like VR stuff have been talking about it, thinking that it's pretty good. So I might have to look into it and keep an eye on it now. I was thinking it was a survival-y type game, but it's very much not. It's a shooter, melee, climby thing. It's got a lot going for it, to be fair. I think this is why I thought it was a survival thing, because that's mostly what I have seen of the gameplay, is cooking. Anyway, alright, it looks interesting enough. It's always difficult to tell with VR games when it's just video and you don't have it in the headset or whatever, because it's they can be very, very different. I know it is. No, Vitruvius VR is just the developer. Maybe it is exclusive. Unless it's... Oh, no, it's not. This is a PlayStation trailer, so maybe it isn't. Anyway, moving on. Demonology, also a PC-only thing. So this is kind of a detective-y type game. So you are called to this village because there have been signs of witchcraft. You are a witch finder. It's kind of inquisitor. And you have 5 days to discover who is the witch, pretty much. And You do that through the usual video game detective things. You're talking to people, finding clues, that kind of thing. But you also can just torture people because you're an inquisitor. So that's another way for you to get information. It is all done in this monochromatic art style, so up to you how you feel about that. Not everybody is up for this kind of style. I think it's an interesting concept. What we don't know is whether it's randomized who the witch is, or whether it's always the same, like it's a scripted thing, or a predetermined thing rather. Anyway, as Demonology, it is, as far as I'm aware, is PC only for now. Moving on, then we have a couple of remasters and ports. So Tales of Grace's F remastered. This is I think it's a PS3 Tales game. Some of the Tales games can be hit and miss. There's like 20 plus of them at this point. So they're not all going to be good. Tales of Graces is one of the better ones. But otherwise, it is what you would expect from your standard Tales game. It does have a kind of childhood friends thing. You come back to your village, and your best friend is now the villain thing going on. Anyway, I think Tales of Grace is one of the only ones I haven't played. I'm not sure how good it is exactly. Donkey Kong Country Returns HD is a port of Donkey Kong Country Returns, which itself was somewhat of a remake of the original Donkey Kong Country. So yeah, all of those caveats. But otherwise, it's a Donkey Kong platformer. It's really good. Even the bad Donkey Kong games are still good, except Donkey Kong 64. But all of the other ones are pretty good. So it's more of that. I know you can't really go wrong there. Nintendo did still find a way to go wrong with it, though. We'll talk about that later. Moving on. So some games that have now hit early access. So Hyper Light Breaker. This is from Heart Machine, people behind Hyper Light Drifter, which is a really good top-down Legend of Zelda type thing, futuristic. And Solar Ash, which is a bit of a Shadow of the Colossus crossed with the Pathless. Also quite good, if a bit jank. So Hyper Light Breaker has been delayed going into early access for a really long time. I think it was meant to be in there like a year and a half ago at this point. So it has now finally hit early access. Initial impressions are it's pretty good, if a little bit hollow right now. From what I have seen of it, it's got a little bit of Fortnite to it, to be honest, and that kind of makes me not want to play it. Most of that is just coming from, like, literally, you can see it. So not necessarily the melee, but definitely the shooting just makes it feel like Fortnite. Like this, like that exact movement and what have you. The colors and that kind of thing. It just makes it feel like Fortnite, and I'm just like, Anyway, with what I always do with early access games is I'll wait until you're 1.0. Anyway, moving on. Also hitting early access, Airborne Empire. So this is a kind of city management thing, with the caveat being is your city is floating in the sky. So it is city management, as well as sort of tower defense in a way. So you're going to be assaulted by sky pirates. So at the same time, you're building up your city to be like a nice place to live, all of the kind of things you'd expect from something like SimCity and that kind of thing. While at the same time making sure you have, defenses and offenses to fight off sky pirates and that kind of thing. The gist of the story, I think, is that humanity in eons past used to live in the sky on these floating cities, and you're sort of bringing that technology back or something like that, but the sky pirates don't want you to do it because they want to own the sky. Anyway, that's Airborne Empire, also on early access. And then another game that's also doing the sky thing, but is a little more, I was going to say closer to the ground. It's not really any closer to the ground, but rather than it being a city management thing, it's more of a survival type thing. But you will have You will have kind of base building, but it's not going to go the full way to like a full-on city flying in the sky or anything. The flying in the sky bit is just you, and even then it's gliding. It's not really flying. So there's some very heavy survival elements. There's some base building, as you can see there as well, exploratory kind of things. I don't remember if there's combat mechanics in the game. I'm sure that there is. He just has a bow and arrow there. So yeah, does look like it's a multiplayer thing as well. So that is also hitting early access. That's a loft. It has a llama that you can pet, or not a llama, an alpaca. I can't tell. I can't tell if it's a llama or an alpaca. I think it's a llama because it's shorter than you. Anyway, that's a loft also hitting early access this week. Or did hit early access this week. Anyway, unfortunately though, it is now time to talk about the worst part of video games, the video game industry. So, Sony is continuing its live service push. Remember? Remember when they had plans to do 12 live service games? Remember how good that was going? With cancelling Concord and... No, releasing Concord and then trying to pretend they didn't release Concord and then cancelling it. And then laying off Fire Sprite. Then cancelling their Last of Us live service thing. And cancelling a bunch of other ones that are slipping my mind right now. But they've cancelled a lot of things. Anyway, they're continuing to do so. So now there's news that they have cancelled 2 live service games, proposed live service games that were unannounced, coming from Bluepoint Games and another one coming from Bend Studio. All we really know about it is that Bluepoint were working on a live service God of War title. What the fuck that was supposed to be, I don't know. Who was asking for that? Nobody. God of War is not known for this kind of thing. I don't know why you would try to shoehorn it in, but then again, Last of Us was not known for it either. We do know there's a Horizon one planned as well. I mean, you could possibly make the argument for that one, but the God of War one just doesn't make sense. Anyway, that was being developed by Bluepoint. Bluepoint up until now had been known for remakes and remasters of some really good games. So they're the people behind the Demon's Souls remake, PS5 exclusive. They're also the people behind the Shadow of the Colossus remake, which is really, really good. And the hope was that Bluepoint were working on some other remake. And the real hope was that they were working on a Bloodborne patch, or a Bloodborne PS5, or a Bloodborne remake entirely kind of thing. No, they were working on a live service God of War thing. Fuck's sake. And as for what Sony Bend were working on, we don't know. The rumor was Siphon Filter. But if it was a live service thing, was it a live service Siphon Filter, or was it something else? Again, we don't really know. Anyway, these were cancelled following a recent review. How recent was that review? Was the review after Concord? Was the recent review Concord's reviews? 0 out of 10? Anyway, neither studio is being shuttered. Sony did not state whether the decision will lead to layoffs, because it will. And anyway, the rest of the article is pointing out how they've kind of... The whole live service thing for Sony is not going well. So obviously Concord is probably the high profile one, you know, didn't even make it a week. Firewalk, not Fire Sprite. Firewalk were then shuttered. So that doesn't exactly bode well for Bluepoint and Bend. Then they were working on a Spider-Man multiplayer thing. It's going to be like a Venom thing that they were working on. That's been shelved. We know they were working on a Last of Us one. That's also been shelved. We now know their God of War one is being shelved. So yeah, a lot of them are not going great. Helldivers 2 is going well for them, and that's kind of it. It's 1 out of 12 so far. not the best. Not the best move. Yeah, so somebody did kind of post in Resetter, like here's Sony's 12 live service attempts so far. Arrowhead, Helldivers 2, pretty much the only one that's actually working out for them. We now know Bend and Bluepoint have had theirs cancelled. Bend are working on some unannounced one. Bluepoint, God of War. Marathon maybe is still coming. Don't know. Bungie were working on another thing called Payback. Was also cancelled. The Twisted Metal game was cancelled. Concord arguably cancelled. Guerrilla Games is working on a Horizon one. Don't know what's happening with that. Haven Studios, the Jade Raymond acquired studio, is working on Fairgrounds. I thought it was called Fairgrounds. Anyway, don't know what's happening with that. The Spider-Man one cancelled. London studio were working on some fantasy multiplayer thing, but then the whole studio was shut down. And then, as we knew, Naughty Dog was working on a Last of Us thing, which was also cancelled. So it's going well for them right now. I think the only reason Horizon is still going is because Guerrilla Games is Herman Hulst's baby, and Herman is the current president of Sony's Worldwide Studios. So I think they have a bit of protection there, whereas the rest of them are not getting that kind of protection. Now, obviously, as you can see, that's a lot of first-party studios for Sony that have been working on games that are not going to come out now. So the question would be, the fuck is coming out this year, next year, possibly the year after that for Sony? Fucking nothing by the looks of us. We got Ghost of Yotai, that's about it. We know Naughty Dog are also working on the Heretic Prophet thing, Space Heretic, whatever the fuck it's called. They showed off at the Game Awards. Arrowhead are continuing going to be working on Helldivers 2. Bend, I guess, go back to drawing board on something. Bluepoint, just fucking give them Bloodborne already. Bungie, will they even still be a studio? I don't know. Firesprite, I don't know what they're doing. I think they were they shut down? I don't know. Insomniac, Wolverine, we haven't heard anything about it in a long time, but they are allegedly still working on it. London studio was shut down. We don't know what they're doing. Anyway, moving on from there. That's not the only live service that is shit itself. Suicide Squad killed the Justice League. We're still talking about it. Anyway, ends with 2-minute long wet fart to kind of wrap up the game, if you like. Now, it's not literally doesn't end with a wet fart, but it might as well have. Anyway, it's now received its final season. It's the last part of any content it's going to get. The game is effectively finished at this point. And with that, an ending to its main story, that it's definitely a thing that exists. Yeah, it's pretty dire. So the rest of the article is spoilers. I'm not even gonna scroll down to it, just in case, because the game is currently on PlayStation Plus. You might want to check it out. Morbid curiosity, I don't know, but I'm not gonna spoil it for you. But it is a very cheap ending. It's just a, still image cutscene, comic book cutscene art. It's just narrated over by Harley Quinn. Effectively, I can't say. I can't say without spoiling it, I think, but yeah, I can't say. It's just bad. It's just really bad. I can't say it without spoiling it. If you want to know, reach out to me elsewhere or just read the article. But yeah, pretty bad, and mostly shows how little respect Warner Brothers has for any of these kind of things. Anyway, moving on. Oh yeah, I should probably have put this with the PlayStation story, but anyway. So former PlayStation boss says he would have resisted the live service push. So Shuei Yoshida was president of Worldwide Studios 2008 to 2019, also known as kind of the end of the PS3 and vast majority of the PS4, aka very good for Sony. Beginning of PS3, not so much. By the end of it, they were doing all right. They were starting to turn the corner, and the PS4 was very strong, obviously, for Sony. Anyway, 31 years has now left the company. So he was on Kind of Funny Games for an interview. There's a couple of other things they were talking about. They were talking about the PS Vita and why it just didn't do great, and there were a couple of reasons given. They didn't allocate enough resources to the PS Vita for like developers and stuff to work on it. The whole proprietary memory card thing was a huge barrier to entry for people to get the PS Vita in the first place. A bunch of other things that were added, and why there's no Bloodborne for PS5. there's no specific reason given. Yoshida just speculates that Miyazaki is very precious about the game and doesn't want anyone else to work on it. But he's also busy with other things, so we'll only get it if Miyazaki can either find someone he trusts to work on it or gets time to work on it himself, which will probably be never, because I don't imagine FromSoft will let him do that anyway. But other things that came up were his thoughts on Sony's push into live service. So for me, I was managing this budget. I was responsible for allocating money to what kind of games to make. If the company was considering going that way, it probably didn't make sense to stop making another God of War or single-player game and put all the money into the live service games, which is what they've done. However, what they did when I left and Herman Hulst took over is the company gave us a lot more resources. I don't think they told Herman to stop making single-player games. They said, these games are great, keep doing that, and we'll give you additional resources to work on these live service games and try it out. I'm sure they knew it was risky. The chance of a game becoming successful in this hugely competitive genre would be small, and yet they went for it anyway. Anyway. He did say that you can't plan... If I was in Herman's position, probably I would have tried to resist that direction, but maybe that's one of the reasons they removed me from first party. So, Yoshida in 2019, he didn't step down for the company. He didn't retire until this year. He moved into a head of indies or something like that position, which a lot of people saw as a demotion. For his part in the interview anyway, he said he didn't see it as a demotion. It was something he wanted to work on, and he was tired of having being responsible for such big budget stuff, so he kind of wanted to take it in a smaller direction. It does seem that Jim Ryan, perennial villain of the channel, was a reason for why that happened. I was worried about that trend being that indie games were seemingly avoiding the PlayStation at the time and how we were being seen. So when Jim Ryan said, "Shu, we've been criticized, we're not doing enough for indies," Shuei said, yeah, you should do something about it. And Jim said, no, I want you to do something about it. And that's obviously where he ended up joining indies anyway. You can take for that as what you will about fanboy fodder that Shuhei Yoshida, who was for the most part being seen as the last good president of Sony Studios, was against the whole live service push, and as you can see, he potentially had a reason to be against it. Anyway, moving on from there. So, layoffs. Layoffs are continuing until morale improves. 2 weeks into 2025, 3 studios are already closing down. Amazing. So, Toadman Interactive, who were responsible for a lot of the MechWarrior things, and I've also been a support studio on Lord of the Rings Online and another MechWarrior game. They are being shut down because of their what do you call this? First party endeavors, I suppose. Immortal Unchained and Hero Defense and Bloodsports TV didn't do great commercially, so they're being wound down. The studio is being closed and potentially is going to be folded into Enad Global 7, which is the parent company instead. Ongoing work for hire contracts with Daybreak and Cold Iron will be protected in this process, which is these games, Lord of the Rings Online and MechWarrior 5. On top of that, Piranha Games will also be laid off. These are people who do some also MechWarrior stuff. They're being let go as well. The team at Piranha truly delivered a high-quality game that exceeded both internal as well as external expectations in terms of quality, story, and gameplay. Here's your reward. You're fired. Did exactly what you wanted us to. Excelled, even. Better than what you were expecting it was going to be. But because it didn't sell well, you're fired. Cool. Not the marketing team, maybe, or the sales team, or the upper management, maybe. No, none of them. Robocraft 2 developer Free Jam is also closing its doors for similar reasons. Their games just didn't do well enough. Card Life, Robocraft 2. One really interesting one though, Counterplay Games. So that name may not mean much to you. Counterplay Games are the developers behind Godfall, which was pushed as a big PS5 launch exclusive at the time. I guess it didn't sell well for them or whatever, because they were also shuttering themselves. Unfortunately, we were unable to continue our partnership with Jackalyptic Games. So this is from a Jackalyptic employee. Unfortunately, we were unable to continue our partnership into the new year with Counterplay Games, and they have been disbanded. So yeah, we didn't even get like an official like press release about that one. Having to hear about it through LinkedIn. But yeah, layoffs are continuing. Speaking of, Microsoft conducts even more layoffs across various divisions. So there's a point out here, it's Microsoft layoffs, it's not Xbox layoffs specifically. So this is across the broader Microsoft company. But it is affecting the video game division, which of course would be Xbox. Anyway, it's unclear what exactly small means. Small amount of layoffs. That's how it's being characterized. What does small mean with Microsoft when they have like 22,000 staff? What's small in that case? Anyway, this one's pretty shit though. So last week, Microsoft confirmed upcoming layoffs to Business Insider, which is the source for this, targeting underperforming employees. However, today's cuts are apparently unrelated to those terminations, so they're not because of underperformance. What are they because of then? They couldn't even be arsed to just make up, oh yeah, you're not performing well. That's why. Lol. Instead of just, no, we're just going to treat ourselves to some layoffs. Push that number up a bit more. This marks the third consecutive year of laying off video game workers. Starting in 2023, Microsoft laid off 10,000 employees, which disproportionately affected the video game division. 343 Industries lost a lot of people. The Coalition lost a lot of people. Bethesda Game Studios lost a lot of people. A lot of people who were let go alleged that mismanagement in the studio is why there was a drop in performance, but obviously management weren't touched. 2024, Microsoft laid off a considerable number of people at Activision Blizzard after they acquired them, which they said they wouldn't do, which of course we all knew they would. Anyway, they wanted to make sure that they were all aligned on the best opportunities for growth. And then, later in the year, they closed down Arcane Austin and Tango Gameworks, alleging that they had spread themselves too thin with the Activision acquisition. Well, maybe if you hadn't let all those people go to be aligned on your best opportunities for growth, you wouldn't be spread so thin. Good stuff. Anyway. Alright, so I did say Donkey Kong Country Returns HD, that Nintendo did find a way to fuck it up, and they did. So they've once again omitted the original developers from the credits. So they did this with Mario and Luigi Brothership earlier last year at some stage. Anyway, so Nintendo were given an opportunity to comment on it, and they didn't really, to be honest. Anyway, Nintendo said it believes in giving proper credit, but just not actually doing it, I guess. Recently omitted Retro Studios from the Donkey Kong Country Returns HD credits. Retro Studios were the original developers of Donkey Kong Country Returns on the Wii. And then the HD version is being held by Forever Entertainment. They are credited in the game's credits. The only thing you see that references Retro Studios is based on the work of the Donkey Kong Country Returns team. So the name isn't even... It's not based on the work of Retro Studios. It's... You'd have to look up who the team is. Anyway, their statement was, "We believe in giving proper credit for anyone involved in making or contributing to a game's creation, and value the contributions that all staff make during the development process, except no, we don't." Or they're making a distinction that Donkey Kong Country Returns HD is a distinct video game and is not related to Donkey Kong Country Returns, which is a bit shit. But it would be in keeping in a very legalese way, I suppose. Nintendo has previously been called out for missing those who worked on games from its credits. Yes, Metroid Prime Remastered was missing people. As I said, Brothership was missing people, and so on. So they have prior for this. Doesn't matter how often they're called out on it. Anyway. Okay, so this one's sort of still developing. This news only really came out over the weekend, so this could change by the time you hear it. from me. Anyway, Genshin Impact maker agrees to pay $20 million in FTC case accusing it of violating children's privacy and deceiving players. So, this is coming from it's actually coming from the US Department of Justice, but it's on behalf of the Federal Trade Commission. And basically they have filed for settlement, I guess, for this, for violating children's privacy laws, deceiving users over the true cost of obtaining rare loot box prizes. So a lot of this has to do with the US COPPA laws, the Children's Online Privacy Protection Rule, which is very shit and very poorly written. But the kind of general gist of it is you can't harvest data from children under 13 or 13 and under, something like that. And you're not really meant to market to them or anything like that as well. But this FTC is alleged or accusing Hoyoverse, Genshin Impact people of doing exactly that. So actively marketing Genshin Impact to children and of collecting their personal information, which is violation of COPPA law. So that's one thing. That's a problem. And then the other issue is that they're deceiving players regarding the odds on their loot boxes. So if you are not familiar with how Genshin Impact works, it is essentially a loot crate system, or a loot box system. You get your real money, and you buy fake money, and then you use the fake money to buy tickets, and you use the fake tickets for goes on the slot machine, essentially, or goes on the loot box. And the loot box can have anything from like weapons and accessories and things like that to full-on characters. And characters is what you're looking for. And then obviously the characters come in different rarities. You're looking for a 5-star character. It's like the best quality and so on. And they're very rare. And the issue is, how rare are they? And if you dive into the odds on Genshin Impact, and it doesn't exactly display them prominently, but there is a way to view them in-game. You do have to dive through a couple of menus to do it, but you can do it. And it's low. It's real fucking low. Anyway, so the issue they have is that the fact that you are converting real money through so many different things is disguising exactly how much a loot box is. A pull on the loot box is, essentially, or pull on the slot machine is. Because you don't know how much does one ticket cost. It costs 100 Stardust or whatever. And how much was 100 Stardust? I don't know, but you can buy 1,000 Stardust for this discounted price. It's like, how much is that actually? Now, if you ask their lawyers, zero. It costs nothing. Because they don't want to have any kind of financial obligation to it. Anyway, they're alleging that all of this exchanging of real dollars for bundles of virtual currency that have to then be re-exchanged multiple times to open loot boxes is complicated, challenging, and confusing, and particularly for children, and then particularly for children under 13, and so on. So that is essentially the crux of their complaint. The purchasing process misleads consumers about the amount of money they spend on loot boxes on an ongoing basis, and the amount of money they would likely need to obtain, or to spend to obtain certain prizes. So exactly how much money would you have to spend to get a 5-star character? After a while, it is guaranteed. But I forget exactly how many pulls before it's guaranteed you'll get a 5-star character. But the fact that they're obfuscating it through multiple layers of exchanging of virtual currency for fake items and then tickets and so on, means you never have a one-to-one thing. And that's also part of the complaint. So Hoyoverse has agreed to settle for $20 million. As part of the settlement, they neither admit or deny allegations. One would suggest that if you weren't willing to pay the complaint, it means that you are somewhat admitting it. But anyway, so one of the more interesting outcomes of this settlement, not just the money necessarily, and not just the COPPA agreement that they somehow have to know how old the person playing is, and then to know not to track them and get their data and what have you. And is that just going to be a am I over 13 or not, yes, no thing? Probably enough, I don't know. Anyway, but kind of the more interesting one is it prohibits Hoyoverse from selling loot boxes using virtual currency without providing an option to purchase them with real money. this is a really interesting requirement, and it would also be interesting to know if this is like, again, not a lawyer, so I don't know how this would necessarily work, but does this act as a precedent for things like FIFA or the Pokemon trading card game? Because they work the same way. They also have the convert into virtual currency bullshit and then use the virtual currency to buy the thing. Like, I'm curious if it would be used that way. Additionally, this is only talking about Genshin Impact, but Hoyo versus other games, Honkai Star Rail, and I haven't played Zenless Zone Zero, so I don't know if that works the same way, but I imagine it does. But Honkai Star Rail has practically the exact same system as Genshin Impact. The only difference is they're named different. But otherwise, it's the exact same. Convert to virtual currency, use the virtual currency to buy tickets, use the tickets to make pulls on the slot machine. It's the same. So they haven't specified that Honkai Star Rail has to do the same thing, but you would imagine either Hoyoverse will make it do it just for cover their own asses, or are they going to willingly settle again for another 20 million? Anyway, moving on. Okay, Poppy Playtime Studio sues Google for not pulling scam imitator apps from its store. So this is an issue that, what's the name of the studio again? Mob something? Fuck are the developers of Poppy Playtime? Mob Entertainment, right. They're alleging that there are a bunch of imitator games on Google Play, and there are. There are tons of them. There's also a bunch of imitator Five Nights at Freddy's and loads of other things. So you may have seen them around the place. You know, they changed the name and it's a little bit different or whatever. This isn't that. This is a game that is pretending to actually be Poppy Playtime Chapter 3 specifically. Instead of like, you know, I don't know, spoopy fun time instead. You know, they just change the stupid name and make it a parody or whatever. Anyway, they're alleging imitators are appearing on various digital game stores. 2 fake Poppy Playtime games in particular, it believes Google is failing to remove. Ordinarily, Google would be protected from any kind of legal repercussions due to DMCA safe harbor agreements, which essentially is, we won't sue you for doing this if you agree to take it down when we ask you to. And it's the take it down when we ask you to part that Google is failing to do, which is why they may not be protected from DMCA because of this. Mob Entertainment argues that Google forfeited the benefits of the DMCA's safe harbor provision because they're still on the Google Play Store despite a takedown being filed in October of last year, the end of October. Now later on in the article it says it's the 1st of November, but it's like a day difference. Time zones could be an issue. Anyway, so the apps in question, Poppy Playtime Chapter 3 and Chapter 4, are attributed to Daigo Games 2020 Inc., which you might know is not Mob Entertainment, and has nothing to do with Mob Entertainment, but they're alleging contains numerous copyrighted designs owned by them. On top of that, the app itself, all it does is push players to buy a guide from some other guy for anything between $30 to $95. And if you do actually do that, you are just sent to a dead URL. So not only is it pretending to be something it's not in copyright infringement, it's also just a huge scam, which of course it is. Anyway, so why go after Google and not just these guys themselves? So according to the timeline provided, Google acknowledged that it did receive a takedown request on November 1st, and a month later it had yet to respond. So that is not taking it down when you are asked to. Now, in the background, this is more than likely like an automated system thing. And an actual human being had yet to review it within the month, but it's still legally actionable, as far as I'm aware. Anyway, Mob Entertainment says it then contacted Google again early December, after which Chapter 3 was removed on December 9th. However, on December 13th, it was back up again. Now, you could have the argument, and I imagine Google will make the argument, that technically we did take it down. Which, you know... which is in agreement with the DMCA. I think the DMCA does have a thing for like As long as they take it down when requested. I'm pretty sure it also has a like within good time as well. Like you can't take like 12 years to take the thing down. Like it has to be within a certain amount of time. Now whether 2 months is enough time, or 1 month really, because it was the end of October and then the beginning of December, so it's really more like 1 month. Anyway, the point is it went back up again. So whatever filtering Google has, it's not doing its job. I'm shocked, honestly. Anyway, has the exact same URL, exact same everything else. Really should have been flagged by then. Anyway, as of time of this article, Chapter 3 and Chapter 4 are still there. So we're talking end of January now. So even if they were, within a time limit on December 9th, they've gone over it now, if it's a month or whatever. Anyway, Mob Entertainment alleges that Google receives 15 to 30% cut of any money. So any of the 30, where was it? $30 to $95, Google is getting 15 to 30% of that, ill-gotten gains from copyrighted material, etc. So you're liable. They failed to take proper action to respond to their DMCA notices. Again, Google could say that they did take it down, but it's back up and they haven't done anything since, so who knows. Anyway, Daigo Game, obviously definitely liable. Anyway, seeking statutory damages of $150K per work, which isn't really a lot, but I guess it's just getting Google to fucking do anything instead. Is it still up? Because I think I checked, but I checked it like earlier this week. Okay, so there's Mob Entertainment's Poppy Playtime. Can you guys see this? Yeah, you can. Okay, so here's Poppy Playtime Chapter 3. That's Mob Entertainment's one. Chapter 1, also Mob Entertainment. Chapter 2, also Mob Entertainment. Chapter 4 is not there. Maybe it's not on the app store yet. Anyway, then Mungus, and then Poppy Playtime Chapter 3. Exact same name, different developer. It's in like within the first couple of returns. I don't see Chapter 4 anywhere. Anyway, so yeah, it is still there. Good shit. Anyway, moving on. So slightly better news. GOG bolsters game preservation efforts by joining European Game Archivist Organization. So this is pretty interesting. So GOG started their game preservation project late last year, or restarted it, as is the case, because GOG, good old games. Originally, when GOG was launched, that was its deal. It was making older games that had become unplayable or difficult to play on modern hardware and changing them and updating them so that they would run on modern hardware. And that used to be what Good Old Games did, and then they kind of got into just becoming another PC game store front, like Valve or like Steam, like the Epic Game Store and so on. So they went back to their original mission, which was to make games playable again, which they have done. There's a fairly massive list of games now that are on that preservation program. But as part of that now, as part of that endeavor, they've decided to join the European Federation of Game Archives, Museums and Preservation Projects, or FGAMP, which I've never heard of, but I've heard of them now. It's a large federation of organizations working to preserve video games as cultural heritage, which is it's a mission statement to get behind. I agree. Anyway, FGAMP, which is a bunch of things from museums in Rome, France, Berlin, Netherlands, Embracer Games, maybe not them. Anyway, and then GOG are joining as well. So they're hoping that GOG will reinforce itself position, some good translating there, as one of the global champions in game preservation. Classic games and the mission to safeguard them for future generations have always been at the core of our work, so that's GOG. As GOG distributes classic games worldwide, GOG is a fantastic addition to FGAMP, whose members are primarily rooted in the cultural heritage sector. So this is kind of being seen as an interesting bridge between, private enterprises like video game publishers, developers, IP owners, that kind of thing, and the, museum heritage people who wouldn't necessarily have a decent avenue to talk to each other, and if anything, have a somewhat acrimonious relationship. I'm not sure if I'm using that word right. Anyway, they don't get along, we'll say. And GOG potentially, as both a facilitator of private enterprise, they sell video games that aren't theirs necessarily, but they also do the game preservation thing at the same time. So they're a good bridge for these things, and that might help in Europe at least. Who knows about the US? But anyway, moving on. Speaking of private enterprises and heritage. Anyway, massive GTA 5 Liberty City modding project bites the dust after friendly takedown chat with Rockstar. Dev says there's no negativity asterisk between it and Take-Two. You can't see the Rockstar lawyer with the gun pointed at his head. Anyway, so there was an attempt made. Came out and everything, so more than just made. Anyway, to recreate GTA 4's Liberty City in GTA 5. So it's the Liberty City Preservation Project was the name of the mod. It's been in the works since 2018. It was released a little bit over the end of December, Christmas time. But has now been subjected to, well, not subjected to DMCA. So it was actually specifically not a DMCA takedown. It was just the Rockstar calling up and saying, just take that down. Thanks. Anyway, after a conversation with Rockstar Games, it has now been pulled from the internet. So it's been removed from its Discord server. Any links that are put up for it will be blocked. It's not going to be hosted on any sites or anything like that. So due to the unexpected attention that our project received, and after speaking with Rockstar Games, we have decided to take down the Liberty City Preservation Project. We appreciate all the support that the project has received. We look forward to continuing to pursue our passion for modding the Grand Theft Auto series. This isn't a DMCA, rather a friendly takedown, mutually agreed upon by all parties involved. I don't know how mutual it was. There is no negativity between us and Rockstar Games, Take-Two Interactive, yada yada yada. Yet another example of, if you're working on something cool, don't fucking tell anybody. Just put it out there. Stop trying to get praise. Stop trying to get kudos. You're just gonna get it taken down. Just slip it into the thing. Slip it into Nexus Mods. Slip it into whatever. And just be like, gonna leave this here? And let people come to you. Anyway. Alright, last thing. The Switch 2 eShop needs improvements. These fans have built a better storefront already. Okay, so this is better eShop. So if you've been on the Nintendo Switch eShop or the website or anything like that, you'll know it's shit. Shit's so bad. It's awful to use, and it's full of shit. It's full of shovelware, an incredible amount of hentai. So the better eShop has a bunch of default filters already that kind of, what's the word? Curate the list to make sure like the slop doesn't come up in your searches. You can turn them off if you want. But the filters enabled by default mean you won't see 6,247 games that have already been selected as low quality, low effort, or some kind of spam. We've got asset flips and a bunch of hentai things and that kind of thing. So that's 6,000 games, okay. And it has the Wii Shop music, because of course it does. Anyway, currently it works in UK, US, and EU. Better eShop was built in less than a week. It's quite possible Nintendo will start blocking us from gathering data, but until then, we will continue to build and improve better eShop. So it does connect to Nintendo's backend. You can buy from the better eShop, and you are buying legitimate copies of the game and so on and so forth. If you still don't feel comfortable doing it, you can obviously just go straight to the official shop when you get there. But yeah, not a hentai game in sight. It's great. There's also a dark mode. But obviously, you gotta keep the original thing. And you guys won't be able to hear it, but you can play the Wii Shop music, and so on and so forth. Anyway, I guess, since everybody seems to think fucking Dynasty Warriors Origins is good, I guess we'll leave that to loop. Yeah. Anyway, that is your news for the 12th to the 19th of January. 2025, 13th to the 12th, 13th to the 19th of January 2025. Nintendo Switch 2 news, I guess. Still haven't really learned much. We know it's bigger than the Switch 2. We know it's bigger than the original Switch. Possibly the size of a Steam Deck. Seems about right. Joy-Cons have an optical sensor. Not sure why. Possibly it has some kind of mouse-like abilities. There's an extra button on the right Joy-Con. Don't know what it does. There's a new Mario Kart potentially on the way. And the way you connect the Joy-Cons may break the Switch. It's questionable. I don't know. That really small bit of plastic, I don't know how long it's gonna hold up. The Joy-Cons might stay stuck to the Switch forever. I don't know. Elsewhere, Blood of Dawnwalker from The Witcher 3 devs, some of them. There's a very brief bit of gameplay at the end. Otherwise, the trailer is a good tone setter. You know, evil vampires taking over the valley, trying to bring their own version of justice. And then maybe it's not so good. And now you, as a half vampire, maybe, have to, you know, deal with the situation. Who knows? Fortune's Run's developer going to prison was a weird one. That came up on social medias. Really? Was not expecting that kind of news. That's not really anything you hear usually. Video game development. I'm sure it happens, but I don't know. This is a weird one. Anyway, which is a shame because the game did look like it was going to turn out to be something pretty good, and it might still turn out to be something pretty good if they continue development when they get out. Makes a good story, I suppose, at least. What else was happening? Lots of other things. Sony shutting down more live service games. So at this point, have they fully routed Jim Ryan's ill-conceived attempt to make live service things happen? I don't know. I still feel like they're looking at Helldivers 2 and thinking we could make that happen again. And so far, at least, they haven't managed it. I don't think it's going to change. Bungie are allegedly working on another live service type thing that was not part of that list from the Twitter's. Some gummy bears or something like that. I don't know. But it's also been rumor that the game has been taken off Bungie and been given to a different developer. So who knows? Who knows what's going on with that? The Suicide Squad getting the farewell that it deserves, I guess. Which is a shitty motion comic ending. Whose content I won't go into, but is just bad. Anyway. More layoffs continuing. The Genshin Impact settlement is an interesting one. Would be curious to see if that has a bigger Genshin impact on the rest of the whole loot box, loot crate thing. Because the whole you need to put the actual cost, money cost, beside the loot box might, dissuade people from using it. It might. Suspect it won't, but at least it's there. At least you can see that every time you press this button, it's costing you $5, €5, whatever. What would be funnier is if they kept a running total of how much you have spent on the game. Just keep it there in the screen all the time. In the middle of the fight, in the middle of the game, in the middle of the match for FIFA, like all of it's just there. Or put it out. Oh god, if it was multiplayer and it just hovered over your head, that would be amazing. This player has spent $100,000 on this game. I mean, the amount of bullying, but still, it would be pretty funny. You're coming up on a FIFA match with somebody, and it's just as you've spent $10 on this game, and this person has spent like $1,000 or something. It's like, I'm not sure I want to play this person. Anyway, there's also that EEK3 showcase. I haven't gotten through it myself, but there's a lot of like Yeah, a lot of it's nostalgia bait. You know, it's PS1 type, and graphics and gameplay sensibilities and stuff like that. That is certainly nostalgic for me. You know, I didn't exactly start video games at PS1. Technically I started at. I'm trying to think now. Is the original Nintendo older than the Spectrum? I can't remember which one I played first. Anyway, but the PS1 is kind of when video games really took over as a hobby for me. Mostly because that's when I played Final Fantasy and Resident Evil, and they're my favorite game series at this point. Anyway, what else? So I don't have anything prepared for channel update, so I'm just going to leave Dynasty Warriors to play. But channel update wise, we will get back to Hollow Body. I had intended to do it this week, but just didn't find the time to do it. I have played back to the part where we stopped, so we should be able to continue on from then. Next week is also kind of busy for me off stream. I have a couple of in-person events that I need to go to in the evenings, and I'm also playing a couple of games, tabletop role-playing games with some people as well, also in the evenings. So yeah, I don't know, let's try to find time to get a game stream in, but again, it might be another week where we don't have one. So we might go the entirety of January without one, which is not exactly how I wanted to start the year, but that's possibly what's going to happen. This is also usually the time where I point out games I've been playing off stream, but actually I was so busy this week I haven't played anything. It's been a shit week. Anyway, that's it from me. That's your news, and your channel updates, such as it is. I'll be back next week anyway with more news, and hopefully you'll see me before then. But if you don't, I'll see you next week. All right, have a good one. Bye.